My name is Lila Harper, and I never thought I'd be sharing such a story. But after I encountered Jesus during my near-death experience, what he showed and told me are too important to keep to myself. What I saw changed everything I thought I knew about life and what awaits us once we die. It all started on a rainy Thursday night, October 5th, 2023. I was driving home after a long, exhausting shift as a nurse, just looking forward to seeing my daughter and getting some rest. The last thing I remember was the glare of headlights coming toward me on the wet road. Later, the doctors told my family that I was clinically dead for almost 8 minutes. But in those minutes, I experienced something that felt like an eternity. Jesus showed me the truth about what happens after we die, the rest, the learning, and even the struggles of the souls who have passed. And before sharing the story with you, let me tell you why even now, everything I've experienced during those moments is still mind-blowing to me. I've always prided myself on being practical. As a nurse in a bustling city hospital, I've spent over a decade stitching wounds, monitoring vital signs, and offering comfort to patients in their most vulnerable moments. My days were long, my feet always aching, but I found satisfaction in knowing I was making a difference. A single mother to a precocious 10-year-old named Emma, my life was a careful balance of chaos and routine. Bills needed paying, meals needed cooking, and the rhythm of my life left little room for things I couldn't see or touch. Faith, spirituality, life after death. Those were things for other people to believe in, patients clutching rosaries during tough surgeries or families murmuring prayers in the waiting room. For me, life was simple. You lived, you died, and that was it. My focus was on the here and now, on getting Emma to her piano lessons and making sure I didn't fall asleep during a 12-hour shift. It was a Thursday night when everything changed. It had been an especially grueling day at the hospital. A bus accident had sent a flood of injured patients into the ER. By the time I left, exhaustion weighed on me like a lead vest. I barely noticed the rain that had begun to fall as I drove home. My mind wandered, replaying moments from the day. A patient's grateful smile, a colleague's strained voice, the sharp beep of machines. I didn't see the other car until it was too late. The sound was deafening. Metal crunched, glass shattered, and the world spun violently. My body jolted forward, restrained only by the seatbelt biting into my chest. And then, silence. For a moment, I thought it was just the shock. I could hear the distant hum of rain hitting the wrecked car, but I couldn't feel anything. My fingers wouldn't move to unbuckle the seatbelt, and the pressure in my chest was unbearable. My breaths came in shallow gasps, each one harder than the last. Then, I was outside of my body. It's hard to describe the disorienting realization that I was both there and not there. I could see myself slumped over in the driver's seat, blood trickling from a cut on my forehead. Paramedics were already at the scene, shouting orders as they worked to pry open the mangled door. I watched, detached, as they fought to save me, their movements urgent but precise. And yet, I felt calm, calmer than I ever had in my life. There was no pain, no panic, just a strange sense of clarity. The rain seemed to freeze in midair, shimmering like tiny crystals. Everything felt different. Realer somehow, as though I was seeing the world for the first time. That's when I noticed the light. A soft, golden glow in the distance, growing brighter with each passing second. It wasn't just light, it was warmth, love, and peace, all beckoning me forward. My practical mind resisted, clinging to what I knew, but something deep inside urged me to let go. The golden light grew brighter, enveloping me in a warmth I couldn't compare to anything I had ever felt. It wasn't just light. It was alive, pulsing, with a love so pure and complete that I couldn't help but be drawn toward it. It felt like home. though I didn't fully understand why. My mind, still tethered to the life I had left moments ago, hesitated. I wasn't ready for this, was I? What about Emma? What about everything I still needed to do? But as I hovered above the chaotic scene of my broken body and the frantic paramedics, those worries began to fade. It was as if the light was gently unraveling the knots of fear and doubt that had been tied inside me for years. I wasn't just seeing it, it was filling me, wrapping around me like a comforting embrace. The transition wasn't immediate. At first, I felt myself drifting, as though I were caught in a gentle current. The world below me, my body, the rain-soaked street, the flashing lights of the ambulance seemed to grow smaller and blurrier until it faded entirely. All that remained was the light ahead and a tunnel of soft, shimmering darkness between me and it. I had heard about the tunnel of light in stories of near-death experiences, but I always dismissed them as nonsense, hallucinations, the dying brain firing off its last sparks. Yet here I was, moving through one, and it felt more real than anything I'd ever known. The walls of the tunnel weren't solid. They were alive, swirling with colors I couldn't name, like a kaleidoscope in motion. Time felt meaningless. I couldn't tell if I had been moving for seconds or hours. All I knew was that I was being gently but purposefully pulled forward. At some point, I became aware that I wasn't alone. I couldn't see them at first, but I could feel their presence, kind, loving, and reassuring. It was as though unseen hands were guiding me, steadying me as I moved closer to the light. I heard whispers, soft and melodic, though I couldn't make out the words. They weren't in any language I knew, but somehow I understood. They were telling me to trust, to let go, to know that I was safe. Then I began to notice shapes emerging from the light. Silhouettes, faint at first, grew clearer as I approached. The first figure I recognized made my breath catch, or at least it would have if I had still been breathing. It was my grandmother, Mary. She had passed away when I was a teenager, and though decades had dulled the pain of her loss, seeing her again brought an overwhelming rush of emotion. She looked radiant, younger than I had ever seen her in life. Her eyes sparkled with joy as she reached out to me, her hands warm and solid. "Lila," she said, her voice the same soothing tone I remembered from childhood. "You're here, sweetheart. It's so good to see you." Tears would have spilled from my eyes if I were still in my body. Instead, I felt waves of love radiating through me, stronger than anything I had ever experienced. "Grandma," I whispered, though I wasn't sure how I was speaking. My thoughts seemed to flow directly into words. "What's happening? Am I dead?" She smiled, a mixture of tenderness and understanding. "Not yet, my love. You're here because you needed to see this, to understand something important. But it's not your time to stay." Her words were a comfort and a mystery. Before I could ask more, she took my hand, and the light around us shifted. In an instant, we were somewhere else. The tunnel was gone, replaced by a breathtaking landscape that defied explanation. It was a garden, but unlike any garden I'd ever known. Flowers in colors I couldn't describe stretched as far as the eye could see, their petals shimmering as if they were made of light. A soft, ethereal music filled the air, though I couldn't see its source. It felt like the very essence of peace and joy had been woven into this place. "Where are we?" I asked, though part of me already knew. "This is a place of transition," my grandmother said, "a way station for souls on their journey. Some come here briefly, like you, to understand. Others stay longer, learning, healing, and preparing for what's next." As I took in the beauty of the garden, I noticed more figures in the distance. Some wandered among the flowers, their expressions serene and content. Others sat in quiet groups, their heads bowed as if in deep thought or prayer. There was a palpable sense of purpose in the air, as though every soul here was exactly where they needed to be, doing exactly what they needed to do. But it wasn't just the garden that captivated me. Beyond it, the light continued to beckon, growing even brighter. My grandmother saw my gaze and smiled again. "There's more to see, Lila. Are you ready?" I hesitated, not out of fear, but because the enormity of it all was almost too much to comprehend. Yet something deep within me urged me to move forward, to keep going, to trust that whatever lay ahead would change me forever. "Yes," I said. "I'm ready." And with that, we stepped toward the light together. The light ahead grew impossibly bright as my grandmother led me forward. Each step, or what felt like a step, though I no longer had a body, brought a deeper sense of peace, like layers of worry and fear were peeling away, leaving only love and clarity. The closer we got, the more I noticed details in the radiance, swirling patterns of gold and white, like living threads of energy weaving together to create the light itself. It wasn't just something to look at. It was something to feel. The love pouring from it was overwhelming, yet it didn't crush me. It lifted me, as if I were weightless. As we passed through the light, the world around me transformed. The garden faded, replaced by something even more awe-inspiring. It was a vast, open expanse, unlike anything I could have imagined. There was no sky, yet everything was bathed in a warm, golden glow. Structures of indescribable beauty seemed to rise organically from the ground, towers and arches that shimmered as though they were made of crystal and light. The air itself felt alive, carrying a soft, harmonious hum that resonated within me, as if the entire space was singing. And then I saw him. At first, he appeared as another part of the radiance, indistinct, yet undeniably present. But as I focused, his form became clear. Jesus. There was no mistaking him, though he looked nothing like the portraits and statues I had seen throughout my life. His presence was more than physical. It was a feeling, an essence. He radiated pure love, the kind of love that sees every flaw, every mistake, and embraces you anyway. His eyes, deep and kind, seemed to hold the entire universe within them, yet they focused entirely on me. "Lila," he said, his voice soft but powerful, echoing in a way that felt as though it was coming from both outside and within me. "You've come far, and there's much I need to show you." I couldn't speak at first. I could barely think. How could I, in the presence of something so perfect? Yet he didn't feel distant or intimidating. If anything, he felt closer and more familiar than anyone I had ever known. Finally, I managed to whisper, "Why me? Why am I here?" His smile deepened, and in that smile I felt a lifetime of reassurance. Because you need to understand what lies beyond so you can help others understand. Come with me. With a wave of his hand, the space around us shifted. In an instant, we were standing in what looked like a vast stadium. The floor stretched out endlessly, and above us, a brilliant canopy of light arched like the heavens themselves. The space was filled with figures, thousands, perhaps millions of souls. They moved in harmony, each one radiating a unique light, yet together they formed a breathtaking symphony of color and energy. "These are the souls," Jesus said, gesturing to the multitude around us. "This is where they come after they leave the physical world." I turned to him, my mind spinning with questions. "What are they doing? Why are they here?" "They are resting, learning, and growing," he replied. "Each one is on a journey just as you are. Let me show you." He led me to the first group of souls. They were gathered in a serene space, surrounded by what looked like golden fields stretching endlessly in every direction. These souls seemed peaceful, content, their light steady and strong. These are the ones who lived with love in their hearts, Jesus explained. They may not have been perfect, but they strived to be kind, to forgive, to grow. This is their time of rest, a taste of the eternal joy that awaits. I watched as a soul embraced another, their light intertwining in a way that spoke of deep, unconditional love. It was more than a reunion. It was a celebration of connection, of bonds that time and death could not sever. From there, Jesus took me to another section, where the atmosphere felt different, charged with energy and purpose. Here, souls were gathered in smaller groups, some sitting in circles, others standing as if receiving instruction. The light around them flickered and shifted, as though it was in the process of becoming something more. "These souls are still learning," Jesus said. "They have carried pain, regrets, or misunderstandings from their time on earth. This is a place of healing and growth, where they face their choices and learn the lessons they need to move forward." I noticed one soul in particular, a woman sitting quietly, her light dim but steady. She seemed focused, as though she was reflecting on something deeply personal. I turned to Jesus, and before I could ask, he said, "She is working on forgiveness of herself and others. She carried guilt for many years, but here she is finding freedom." Tears welled in my eyes as I watched her. It was impossible not to feel her struggle, her hope, and her determination. It reminded me of so many people I had cared for as a nurse, patients who carried burdens they couldn't let go of, even in their final moments. To see that healing was possible, even after death, filled me with a hope I had never known. Finally, Jesus brought me to a darker place. The light here was dim, and the air felt heavy, almost sorrowful. Souls moved slowly, their light flickering weakly as though it were struggling to stay lit. But even here, I noticed something extraordinary. Angels, their forms glowing brightly, moved among the souls, offering guidance and support. These are the souls who have turned away from love and light during their time on earth, Jesus said, his voice tinged with sadness. They are not being punished, as some believe. They are here because their choices have separated them from the love that is always available. But even here, there is hope. I watched as an angel knelt beside a soul whose light was almost extinguished. The angel's presence seemed to spark something within the soul, a faint flicker of light that began to grow. "No soul is ever truly lost," Jesus continued. "Everyone has the opportunity to turn back toward the light. Love never gives up." The weight of his words settled over me, and I realized how much of my life I had spent judging others, labeling them as good or bad, deserving or undeserving. Seeing this place, seeing the hope that existed even in the darkest corners, changed something deep within me. Jesus turned to me, his expression serious yet compassionate. "Do you understand now, Lila? Every soul has a purpose, a chance to grow and become what they were meant to be. This is what awaits beyond death, a continuation of the journey, not its end." I nodded. The words failed me. How could I ever explain this to anyone? How could I make them understand the beauty, the hope, the love that permeated everything here? Jesus seemed to read my thoughts. "You don't need to convince anyone, Lila. Simply share what you've seen. The truth will find those who are ready to hear it." And with that, he smiled, and the light around us began to shift again. I had seen enough to know that my journey was far from over, both here and back on Earth. As the light around us shimmered and shifted once more, the vast, layered expanse resolved into something extraordinary, a place both vibrant and deeply purposeful. Jesus stood beside me, his calm presence grounding me amidst the awe of what I was seeing. "This is what I brought you to understand, Lila," he said, his voice a soothing balm to my racing thoughts. "What happens here is not an end, but a continuation, a part of the eternal journey for every soul." He gestured ahead, and as if in response, the vastness unfolded into 3 distinct realms. Each was alive with activity, humming with a unique energy and purpose. The first glowed with a golden light that felt almost tangible, as though it carried warmth and love in its rays. "These are the souls who lived with love and kindness," Jesus explained. "Though they were not perfect, they strived to grow, to forgive, and to love others during their time on earth. Here, they rest and experience peace, a glimpse of what eternity holds." I turned my attention to the souls in this realm, marveling at what I saw. Groups of radiant figures moved through fields of unimaginable beauty. Flowers of colors I couldn't name swayed gently in an unseen breeze, their petals shimmering as though made of light. Some souls walked hand in hand, their laughter echoing softly, blending seamlessly with the music that seemed to emanate from everywhere and nowhere all at once. Others were seated in quiet circles beneath glowing trees, their expression serene. I noticed one figure sitting alone, her face lifted toward the light above. Her features radiated a deep sense of contentment, as though every burden she'd carried in life had dissolved. This was more than rest. It was a renewal, a space where souls, soaked in divine love, healing from the struggles of their earthly lives. "Do they stay here forever?" I asked Jesus, my voice barely above a whisper. He smiled, a mixture of joy and infinite understanding. "No, Layla. This is a place of rest and renewal, but it is not the final destination. Their journey continues, always moving toward greater understanding and unity with the divine." He extended his hand, and the scene shifted. The second realm came into focus, and its atmosphere was noticeably different. It still shimmered with light, but there was an intensity here, a sense of purpose and transformation. The energy was almost palpable, humming with activity. "These are the souls who are learning," Jesus explained. "They have carried pain, misunderstandings, or regrets from their time on earth. Here, they face their choices, learn the lessons they missed, and grow into the fullness of who they were created to be." I watched, captivated, as souls gathered in smaller groups. Some sat in quiet reflection, their light flickering and shifting, as though they were absorbing some deep truth. Others were guided by radiant beings who exuded patience and wisdom. These guides moved gently among the souls, offering guidance and comfort. One soul caught my attention, a man who stood apart from the others, his light dim and unsteady. He looked unsure, almost hesitant. A guide approached him, placing a hand on his shoulder. Instantly, his light brightened, flickering at first, then growing stronger. It was as if the guide's presence had sparked something within him, a reminder of his potential, his capacity for love and redemption. "What are they learning?" I asked, my voice filled with curiosity and emotion. "They are learning to heal," Jesus replied, "to forgive others and themselves, to let go of the pain and resentment that weighed them down in life. They are understanding the consequences of their choices, not as punishment, but as a way to grow and transform." I nodded, overwhelmed by the hope and love infused in every part of this process. These souls weren't being judged harshly or cast aside. They were being nurtured, given the tools they needed to move forward, to become more than they had been. Finally, Jesus turned my attention to the third realm. The light here was dimmer, the air heavier, and the energy more subdued. I felt an ache in my chest as I looked upon the souls in this place. They moved slowly, their light faint and flickering, as though struggling to stay lit. Yet even here, there was activity, purpose. These are the souls who have turned away from love and light during their time on earth, Jesus said, his voice tinged with sorrow, but also with unwavering hope. They are not being punished, as many believe. They are here because their choices have separated them from the love that is always available. But even here, there is hope. I watched as angels moved among these souls, their radiant forms standing out against the dim surroundings. They knelt beside the faintest souls, their hands outstretched in gestures of compassion. One angel approached a soul whose light was barely visible, touching it gently. I saw the faintest flicker of response, a tiny spark that began to grow. No soul is ever truly lost, Jesus continued. Every soul has the opportunity to turn back toward the light, no matter how far they have wandered. Love never gives up. Tears welled in my eyes as I watched the angels at work. Their patience, their dedication to these struggling souls was humbling. It made me think of the times in my life when I had been quick to judge, to label someone as beyond redemption. How wrong I had been. Do all of them find their way back? I asked, my voice trembling. Not all at once, Jesus said. Some resist for a long time, but the door is never closed. The light always calls to them, and there will always be those who reach out to guide them home. I looked around the three realms, taking in the enormity of what I was witnessing. Rest, growth, and redemption. Each soul was exactly where it needed to be, supported and surrounded by divine love. It was a system so perfect, so infused with grace, that it left me speechless. Jesus turned to me, his expression filled with compassion. This is what the dead are doing, Lila. They are continuing their journey, each in their own way. Some are resting, others are learning, and some are finding their way back to love. There is no end, only growth, only love. I nodded, unable to speak as the weight of his words sank in. This was the truth that so many needed to hear, not just about death, but about life itself. Everything we did, every choice we made, mattered, not because of fear or judgment, but because of the opportunity to grow closer to the divine love that surrounded us all. As I stood there, surrounded by the infinite beauty of these realms, one thing became clear. Love was the answer. It always had been, and it always would be. As Jesus guided me through the realms of souls, I noticed a shift in the atmosphere. The radiant beauty of the realms was undeniable. But now, there was something deeper, a sense of intimacy, of personal connection. Jesus stopped and turned toward me, his gaze filled with a warmth that seemed to pierce straight to my core. "There's someone here who wants to see you," he said, his voice soft but filled with meaning. Before I could respond, the light around us shifted, and I found myself standing in a different part of the realm of learning. The air here shimmered with vibrant energy, as though it was alive with potential and growth. Souls sat in small groups, listening attentively to angelic guides, or walked alone in quiet reflection. The scene was peaceful, but my heart began to race as I sensed something, or someone, familiar nearby. Then I saw her. It was Caroline, my best friend from nursing school. She had died 6 years earlier, taken far too young by a sudden battle with cancer. The shock of her passing had devastated me, leaving a void I had carried ever since. I had never fully processed her loss. Life had been too busy, too chaotic. But now, here she was, radiant, vibrant, and more alive than I had ever seen her. "Caroline," I whispered, my voice trembling. She turned, and the moment our eyes met, I felt a rush of emotion so powerful it nearly brought me to my knees. If I had knees. Her light shone brightly, her smile radiant. "Lila," she said, her voice exactly as I remembered it, warm, teasing, and full of love. "I've been waiting for this moment." I couldn't hold back the flood of questions. "How are you here? Are you okay? I've missed you so much. I didn't get to say goodbye." She stepped closer, her presence calming the storm of emotions inside me. "I'm more than okay, Lila," she said gently. "I'm free. The pain, the fear, it's all gone. This place, it's beyond anything I could have imagined. And you don't have to carry the guilt of not saying goodbye. I felt your love then, and I feel it now." Her words brought tears to my eyes, not physical tears, but a release of the sorrow I had buried for so long. "I've thought about you every day," I said. "I've wondered if you were at peace, if you were somewhere." Caroline nodded, her expression softening. "I've been here, learning and growing. There were things I needed to let go of, things I couldn't resolve in life. But this place, it's full of grace. I've had time to heal, to forgive myself and others." I wanted to ask what she meant, but before I could, she gestured toward a nearby group of souls. One of them, a young man, stood apart, his light dim but steady. Carolyn smiled gently. "That's Liam," she said. "He was my patient during my oncology rotation. I always regretted not doing more for him, not being able to save him. But here, I've been able to help him heal in ways I never could on Earth." I watched as Caroline approached Liam, her light intertwining with his. It wasn't just an act of comfort. It was transformative. His light grew stronger, brighter, as though her presence was helping him remember his own worth. "That's what we do here, Lila," she said, turning back to me. "We help each other grow. Whether it's forgiving, learning, or just being present, every soul has a role to play in the healing of others." Her words struck a chord deep within me. In my work as a nurse, I had always seen healing as something physical, something to be achieved with medicine and care. But here, I realized, healing was so much more. It was spiritual, emotional, and eternal. Then Caroline stepped closer, her expression serious yet full of love. "Lila, you have to take this knowledge back with you. Too many people live in fear of death or believe it's the end. It's not. It's the beginning of something so much greater. And how we live now, how we love, how we forgive, it shapes what comes next." Her words mirrored what Jesus had told me, but hearing it from someone I loved and trusted made it all the more real. "I don't know if people will believe me," I admitted. "How do I make them understand?" Caroline smiled, placing her hand over where my heart would have been. "You don't have to make them understand. Just share what you've seen. The truth has a way of finding the people who need it." As she spoke, I noticed the light around her beginning to shift, as if signaling that our time together was coming to an end. Panic bubbled up inside me. "Wait," I said, "I'm not ready to leave you again." Caroline's smile was filled with infinite love and understanding. "You're not leaving me, Lila. I'll always be with you. Love doesn't end. Not here, not anywhere. You'll see me again. But for now, your time isn't up. You have work to do." Her words echoed in my heart as the light around us brightened and Jesus' presence returned. He placed a hand on my shoulder, his expression filled with compassion. "Do you see now, Lila?" he asked. "Every soul has a purpose, a role to play in the greater journey. Love and connection are eternal. What you do in life matters, not just for yourself, but for others. That is the message you must carry back." I looked at Caroline one last time, her radiant form etched into my memory. "I won't forget," I said, my voice steady despite the ache of parting. "I know you won't," she replied. "You never could." And with that, the light around her intensified, enveloping her until she became part of the brilliance surrounding us. I was left standing with Jesus, the enormity of what I had seen and felt settling into my soul. I wasn't the same person who had entered this place. I had been changed, not just for myself, but for everyone I would meet from that moment forward. As the light around me began to shift again, I felt a gentle pull, like an unseen hand guiding me back. Jesus stood beside me, his gaze steady and full of reassurance. "Your time here is over, Lila," he said softly. "But your journey is far from complete. You have seen what lies beyond, and now it's time to share it." A surge of emotion flooded through me. Gratitude for the profound peace I had experienced, sorrow at the thought of leaving, and an overwhelming sense of purpose. "How will I know what to say?" I asked. He smiled, the kind of smile that carried infinite understanding. "Speak from your heart. The truth will resonate with those who are ready to hear it. Remember, you are never alone." With those words, he touched my shoulder, and everything around me dissolved into the most brilliant light I had ever seen. The peace I felt lingered as I began to sense the weight of my body again, the ache of my chest, the sting of pain, the cool rush of air in my lungs. I was back. I opened my eyes to find paramedics hovering over me, their faces a mix of relief and urgency. "She's back!" one of them exclaimed. I had been gone for minutes, but it felt like a lifetime. As I lay there, the memory of what I had seen burned brightly in my mind. I knew my life would never be the same. I had a message to share, and I couldn't wait to begin. Returning to life wasn't just about breathing again. It was about living with purpose. The experience had stripped away my fear of death, replacing it with a profound understanding of life's significance. I saw the world differently now, every moment infused with meaning. I began to approach each day with love, forgiveness, and compassion, knowing that every choice I made shaped not only my journey, but the lives of others. I shared my story with anyone willing to listen, not to convince them, but to plant seeds of hope and understanding. Death, I now realized, wasn't an end, but a transition, a chance for growth, healing, and eternal connection. What mattered most was how we lived now, loving deeply, forgiving freely, and embracing the divine spark within ourselves and others. My journey wasn't over, and I was determined to make every step count.